Hey everybody, welcome back. Today is another spotlight for small businesses, and today we have Brittany Histing, who is a energy healer and a pretty cool person overall. So, Brittany, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and a reminder to everybody: please do if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll get to them as we can. So, Brittany, want to go for it?
Thank you. Thanks, Drew. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Brittany Histing. I am an energy healer. I am a coach. I'm a wellness coach. I work a lot with the energies and spirituality and mind training. There's just a smorgasbord of things that I have in my toolkit, and I'm super excited to have the opportunity to share with you. I'm from New Jersey. I'm also a surfer, which plays a huge role in what I do for healing and for healing myself and for the whole journey that I'm on right now. So it's a super exciting time in my life. I'm beginning to come extremely clear about what I want and what is my best and most optimal time spent here on Earth. So I'm just excited to share that with everyone.
That's awesome. No, that's really great. You have actually a really cool story, and the story of your journey and how you got where you are right now. Please, I'd love folks to hear about it. So if you want to share that with us, that'd be cool.
Thank you. Yeah. So about 4 years ago, I was working out in Northern California. I had the best job I'd ever had. I was a travel nurse and I kept renewing my assignment because I loved it there so much. And I got a call one day basically that my dad had a lump on his neck and we weren't really sure what it was. And it ended up being a stage 4 terminal disease. It ended up being salivary gland cancer, and it had spread. They did the first PET scan and it had spread to the spine, ribs, and abdomen right off the bat. So as a nurse, I'd worked in the ER for about 4 years. I also was pursuing my master's in nursing education. So I knew a lot about pathophysiology, about cancer. I was not a cancer nurse, but I did a lot of care for cancer patients in the ER when they would come post radiation, post chemo, or, for initial diagnosis sometimes. So I definitely had some experiences with cancer patients, and I knew that stage 4 was not a good thing to hear. And I knew that stage 4 was often associated with, no going back, because once it's spread, it's really hard at that point for any of the treatments that are available to, be able to kind of bring it all back in once it gets out there. So I was activated in a way I had never been before. I had a couple weeks left in my assignment, and I ended up quitting my job and moving home. I left my car. I left some of my clothes. Thank you to my roommate out there. She was amazing, still is. And I just took off time from work. I'd saved some money up from being a travel nurse, and I started researching alternative healing. I started by looking through databases I had access to. I was working at Drexel University at the time, teaching CPR, ACLS, and PALS, which are just like life-saving classes for doctors, nurses, anyone really who works in critical care units in the hospital. Really enjoyed that. I've always loved teaching. Both my parents are teachers, so it was just something that I had a lot of exposure to. So yeah, so I did a bunch of research. I used the databases. I actually ended up meeting a woman a couple days after my dad got diagnosed, and she had stage 4 breast cancer and had healed herself. And I started working with her, and she was writing a book, and she handed me her table of contents. And she had probably 30 chapters in this table of contents. And it just was such a gift from the universe. It gave me basically an entire map of roadways that I could start exploring to help my dad heal. I just became so enamored with the idea of being able to heal. And she told me something really important when I met with her for the first time. And she said, not all people are meant to heal through life. Some are meant to heal through death, and we don't always know what someone's path is. And free will plays a huge role. And so while I was really motivated to heal my dad had his own path. But yeah, so for basically, he got an 18-month prognosis and he lived about 2 years. But we tried all kinds of things together. I just became his healing buddy. I said, whatever you're going to try, I'll try. I'm happy to go through this with you if we need to change your diet or whatever we need to do. And so we just started exploring all kinds of different things. And it was a beautiful journey. My dad was a little bit unhealthy. He was kind of overweight, pre-diabetic, and just it wasn't that he was, in bad shape, but he had had some injuries and surgeries in the past and had to be on antibiotics for periods of time. And so he had good health. He could work. He was a plumber and a teacher. And so he was, crawling under houses and doing all kinds of stuff. But after we started implementing some of these practices, a lot of people said, wow, like your dad looks great. Like he looks better than before when he was, healthy and didn't have cancer yet. And so I just got to see so, extremely and so up close how powerful these other measures are. And I was just, as a nurse, as a traditional, nurse working in the ER, I was quite impressed at the possibility. And it felt good to finally hear from someone that, all can be healed. Whereas in Western medicine, we're often told that, you have a terminal diagnosis or you have 6 months or 18 months or whatever it is. So yeah, that really kickstarted everything. And, my dad ended up passing and that was his journey. But I learned so much and I'm still learning a lot from him. Having him pass has been a huge teacher for me as well. And so that's pretty much my story about how I got to sort of where I am. And there's much more even after that, but I hope that helps you understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's valuable to note that, you do have experience on both sides of the medicine, right? You have the Western and the Eastern and the more traditional medicine, so to speak. And well, I don't want to say traditional because traditional, if you go back, it's traditional is actually more Eastern anyway, but holistic. But like, the Western medicine as well as the holistic or spiritual healing as well. It's interesting because you hear all these situations where people deal with cancer or terminal illness in general, and out of that kind of diagnosis where like, oh well, there's nothing more we can do for this person other than make them comfortable or whatever, comes this sense of urgency, right? Of just desperation almost. It's like I'm gonna try to find whatever I can to try to make sense of this or try to make this better. I remember a good friend of mine. Her daughter was diagnosed with cancer, and she started exploring all these different things. The doctors were like, we can't, the traditional doctors were like, we can't do anything much about this. It's pretty much it's where it is. We can't do anything to treat it. We've done everything we can, and anything else at this point is going to be, hurting her, right? And so what they did was they started looking into different things, and she ended up going to South America. They gave her 6 months. She ended up going to South America to try this, an experimental treatment that was holistic, and she ended up living for like 18 months, and I'm not disparaging any kind of medicine on either side. It's really, I think, like you said, though, everyone has their own journey and things that work for them, and it's a matter of not, I'm not saying discount Western medicine anyway, right? So there's nothing that like, but folks who discount either one of those two things are missing out. I feel like it's a combination of the two. Like anything else, it's a balance, right? That really makes life work, right? Because like you said, your dad didn't have the best lifestyle, the healthiest lifestyle, right? And if you have an unhealthy lifestyle and you're living this way, and then you expect Western medicine to give you a pill and cure everything, then that's not really how things work, right? So
Yeah.
so how do you work with clients? How do folks, what do folks expect to get when they work with you, and how do you help them?
Yeah, everyone is so different. So I do things very individualized, but I have a few practices that I, sort of are like the keystones of my healing practice, and the things that have helped me and things I've explored. And so, for a person that am working with, I'll meet with you first just to get a feel for you, see where you're at, what are your goals, what's going on with you. And once I sort of have an idea, have a feel for your energy, even in energy healing, we do assessment in nonverbal ways as well as verbal ways. So just to meet with someone and get a feel for them, I'll often even be guided to the kinds of things that will help them the most. So it's really cool that I have that line of communication with my guides and teachers, and that is a huge way of helping me. So yeah, once I meet with you, if you do coaching with me, we'll meet, once a week or once a month or whatever works out for us. We'll do a whole smorgasbord. I don't know why that word keeps coming to me today of things. We are going to talk about the mind and the importance of what our internal world is, what our thoughts are, what are we creating? Because truly we create our worlds from our internal, from our thoughts, from our conditioned beliefs and patterns. And you can't overlook that, no matter what you try to do in the physical world, whether it be changing your diet or using pills, Western medicine, surgeries. At the end of the day, if we don't get to the root cause of what's going on, what is creating this experience for you, what is this thing serving in your life, whether it's a disease or a bad relationship or a lost loved one, what is this here for? And how can we use this as a jumping off point? When my dad got diagnosed with cancer, I could have just gotten really sad and quit. And in some ways, for a time, I did do that. I would get down and I would feel hopeless and lost. But you take these obstacles in your life and you find the funnest way to challenge them. And that's what I do when I work with clients. I find the adventure, I find the fun, and I really help you find the adventure and the fun, but I love adventure and fun. So, and I have my own ways of seeing. I have this beautiful gift that when I look at someone, I can see them in their most highest loving existence. And it's such a beautiful thing because it can help. Sometimes you need someone else to be that mirror for you and help you see what you can't see within yourself. And I've worked with a number of coaches and healers, and that's really what they are, is they're that mirror reflecting back to you the beauty that you may not be seeing, because we are all loving beings and we are all coming from love and our love, and we just have to get back to that. So we definitely do the mind stuff. If you're more, depending on where you're at, I have clients that I do surfing with. We use surfing as a tool for healing, getting out in the water. Cold winter water is a great way to do it. We also do in the summer. I use healing through medical medium healing. He is a guy who hears the spirit of compassion, and he has brought through 6 books about how to use fruits, vegetables, and some supplements to heal. So it's typically a combination of those things plus energy healing, which doesn't always need to be as formal as a session. Energy healing is kind of like a massage. You go in, it's not having that touch and that rubbing, but I use light touch or no touch to work with your field. I can assess your field, and then usually work with the chakras, sometimes the meridians, and sometimes I'll just be inspired to do different kinds of things, open up healing or open up and allow for connection between you and your guides. Really, it's whatever, whatever comes through intention and comes through that intelligence of that energy. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. And honestly, like, I know a lot of folks tend to look at this at energy healing or those kind of spiritual practices with like a level of skepticism, right? And
Yep.
and I was I definitely did. Yeah, I mean, years ago, 10 years ago, I probably was one of the people who was like, oh yeah, that's just that's bullshit. It's woo stuff. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's not real. People try to take people's money or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
but it's like, having experienced things myself, honestly, their energy is a real thing. And I talk about this a couple of times with our previous with another guest, my coach guest, Nahid. We talk about energy a lot, right? And energy shifting and controlling, trying to control the flow of energy, or at least not control it, but impact the flow of energy as much, right? And energy is one of those things where you can't deny energy exists, right? There's a reason that like the Matrix and all these other movies and TV shows and all science fiction is based on humans powering things by just existing, because we have an energy field. We have things that happen. There are things that happen that can't be attributed to just, you can talk about situations where they're coincidences, but there are situations where it's like such a crazy coincidence or multiple sets of coincidences to make things happen, like precognition or things like that, where you don't necessarily have an explanation for it. Or where you just impact the outcome of things just by thinking a certain way or really focusing a certain way. And so hearing people talk about the energy work is really, really powerful. And I to those people who are watching who are skeptics, please don't discount this. Just like, look at explore it, honestly. Let's just see if you doubt it, look into it and see if it makes sense. The other thing of it too is your energy will also impact the result, right? So if you go into this with a significant level of skepticism, you're probably not going to get the result you're looking for, or maybe you will get the result you're looking for if you're looking for a bad result, right? Or a negative result.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many things I could say about this. So I want to mention synchronicity and coincidence, because when I talk about conditioned beliefs and sort of programs that we run on, we have a lot of just foundations of our beliefs. And one of those things is that we live in a world where things are really random and things just sort of happen to us. And that's the belief that I ran under most of my life, is that if something bad happened, up into including my dad getting diagnosed, it was just a random thing. And life is full of suffering, and not that everyone is always super clear. That's not always in the front of our consciousness. There's a lot of subliminal consciousness programming that happens that we're not always super aware of. And so one of the things that's really helped me is shifting my view from coincidence to synchronicity. And synchronicity, from everything that I've experienced and read and explored, synchronicity is a powerful indicator that you're on the right path. Your guides will speak to you through synchronicity. And there are tons of books about synchronicity that are beautiful to read. And I actually have an entire blog in my head that's called Synchronicity Stories, because there have been so many times where synchronicity has shown me the path. And when you start trusting in that guidance, that synchronicity, you will start to see how all these doors will open that you never knew could open. And I just want to also say about what you said, we're at a time in history where traditional science, Newtonian physics, is being challenged by quantum physics, which is, it's still physics, but it's totally different. And energy healing aligns with quantum physics. And quantum physics is newer, and it's not really being expressed to people as clearly as I feel it could be. It's a very powerful thing. It indicates to us that, number one, our beliefs play a role in what happens to us. There's this entire thing in quantum physics called the belief effect, which means, they do all these studies, but you don't realize that the thoughts that people have about the studies, the scientists who are performing those studies, those thoughts impact the outcome of the study. Not to discount traditional science. I still love looking at studies, and I still use that as a resource, but I also use my own intuition and guidance, and know that, quantum physics is the new, not really new, but sort of new. It is the truth of this reality. And there are a lot of truths about this reality that we are not being exposed to at this time. And one of those things is energy healing, and how that plays a role. It sort of works. It does work outside of time and space. Once you have that experience, you may not be able to explain it in words, but once you have the experience, you'll at least start to get a feeling or an understanding for what everyone's talking about when they're talking about energies or quantum physics or belief effect. There's just so many things that are playing out at this time. And it's just such an interesting time to be alive, because once people start to embrace energy and start to embrace their creative abilities, we can create an entire world from our thoughts. We don't even have to act in the world. We're always trying to save the planet or save the whales or save this. And you start to realize the only person you need to quote unquote save is yourself. You just need to clarify your mind, and wow, the things that can happen. It's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about, quantum physics, it's one of those things where I forgot who had this. I love this quote but I forgot who said it, but it's basically, magic is basically just science that hasn't been discovered yet. Right. I mean, a lot of things, almost everything in our lifestyle right now that exists in our lifestyle, talk about TV, computers, and connecting to us talking right now on this live stream, was impossible 50 years ago, was impossible 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And if you told someone in the 80s and 70s or whatever, or, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, that it would be possible for two people who are hundreds of miles apart to have a conversation without physically meeting, without, it's just like, oh, that's impossible. It's magic if you have that happen. Right. I keep thinking back to the scene in, I have random movie references, but Ninja Turtles 3 back in the 90s, where April O'Neil gets transported back to feudal Japan, right? And she has her Walkman in her pocket, which again, nowadays, people have no idea what the hell a Walkman actually is. A Walkman was a tape player. A tape was an old CD, basically, an old MP3 player. Imagine MP3 players, but bigger and bulkier and less functional. But that's what a Walkman was. And so she had this thing, and it fell out of her pocket and would start playing music really loud. And everyone freaks out and they destroy it. And she's like, well, I took 4 guys and I locked them in there and made them do that because they were like, oh my God, it's magic. She's a witch. That's basically the reaction that people would have if they saw computer screens or cell phones, or 80% of stuff we use on a daily basis that we take for granted, right? It just hasn't been discovered yet. And so understanding that, I mean, medicine by itself, the advances in medicine in the last 30, 40 years are essentially akin to magic 100 years ago, right? I mean, you talk about the things we're able to repair and things we're able to fix nowadays. You can't even think about that stuff back 100 years ago, right? There's no way.
Yeah.
So to people who doubt this kind of work, I would highly recommend that they read up on it, like actually research it and try it out, see if it makes sense to them. A lot of times, skeptics are the ones who become real believers and real serious champions of this stuff. I don't know if you seen the show Sting. What was it? Frick, I forgot what it's called. Surviving Death or something like that. It's on Netflix.
I don't think
I forgot what it's called.
no, I don't think I've seen that.
It's really cool, but it's I mean this is a kind of a segue from what we're talking about right now, but it's kind of like along the same lines. It's basically people talking about their near death or after death like experiences where they've been dead for like a minute or 5 minutes and they have out of body experiences. And the doctors, the medical doctors are like, oh yeah, and this is what the brain goes through a process when it's dying, and you see lights, you see different things. You're not really it's a hallucination. It's not real. And then the person's like, okay, well, this is what I saw. And they describe exactly like medical instruments they've never seen. They describe people that they've never seen in the room, who's standing where around their body as they're trying to resuscitate them. And the doctors are like, there's no way that person would know that or have that awareness. And it's inexplicable. It's crazy. It's really, really cool. Check it out when you get a chance. I think it's called, it's on Netflix. I forgot what it's called now, but it's like Surviving Death or Staying. I don't know, but
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring that up because when my dad got diagnosed, one of the things I did for myself was I started researching death. I started looking at my beliefs around death. I have a spiritual teacher. She's a channeler. Her name's Tina Louise Spalding. And I was following her work for a couple of years at that point. And one of the things they encouraged us to do was to research our beliefs around death. And one of the things that I found was, I was raised traditionally Catholic, and in my mind, or at least I hadn't spent a whole lot of time even looking at what death meant to me. And in our culture, it's kind of this like hidden, sort of uncomfortable thing. When I started researching it and getting into it, I found such beauty, like so much beauty. And I'm not saying that makes losing a loved one any easier. You still go through the human experience of grieving and losing and just all of that stuff. Of course, you're going to cry, but at the same time, I wasn't scared my dad was in hell or hoping he was in heaven. I started to learn that people that leave the earth and have these near-death experiences, what they experience is really beautiful. They come back and they say, I didn't want to come back, but, my guides told me to come back because there was something here that, was still important for me to experience. There was something here for me on earth that, could help heal my soul or whatever it is, that purpose that you come into this lifetime with. So it's such a cool thing for you to bring that up in this interview, because it can really change everything for you, especially now with all this stuff going on in the world. The fear of death is the underlying thing that is everyone is confronting at this time. It's not that, you don't get afraid of death, or I don't still get, scared of those things, but you start to develop a comfort with it, and you start to realize that death isn't this scary, terrifying thing. And not that you want to die, but you just embrace it as another aspect of life. It's the nature of this reality. Things die so other things can live, and it's a cycle. And we just sort of get scared about the end of that cycle. We prolong life as long as we can, whether we put people on tubes or put them in nursing homes. We just do this prolonged life thing. Whereas animals, when they're sick and suffering and dying, we put them down. We put them out of their misery because we can't imagine anything suffering. And so we just have these like twisted beliefs that it's not that, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. Nothing's twisted, but it's just some of the beliefs that we have and we hold, it causes us a lot of suffering. And that suffering, it hurts our body, it hurts our mind, it hurts our soul. And you don't have to suffer through every experience. There's always going to be grieving and emotion, and you're never going to be done clearing your stuff, unless you're a master or whatever. But when you start to look at near-death experience, you can start to take some of that fear away from it and start to see the beauty in every experience and stop judging everything as good, bad, or whatever. Maybe taking a step back and saying, I maybe don't know what this is for. And doing that with my dad was one of the best things I ever did for myself. Just being like, I don't know why he died. I was this nurse and I was propelled on this healing journey, and I thought, I'm going to cure my dad and I'm going to heal him. And that was great and all. It was a beautiful part of my journey, but it was humbling when he passed to just realize, like, wow, there's a bigger plan here. And maybe there's more of a lesson for me in this. Maybe there's something more valuable to be gained, and just taking everything as this is good, trusting that this is what is meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and not even saying, necessarily good or bad. It's just this is it is, and it's just good or bad is relative. I get another shock or another movie or TV reference from me, but Cobra Kai is one of my favorite shows, by the way. Awesome, season 3 is amazing. But one of the things that I love from that I'm going to talk about in another video is in more depth, but is the idea that there's no good and bad, right? There's just, and I don't agree with the second part, was the strong and weak, but what I do think is that there is, in terms of people, there's not good and bad people. There's selfish people and there's people who are not selfish, or people who are selfless, right? In the same way with events happening, there's either events that serve us or events that don't serve us, or events we don't know how they're serving us yet. There's not good or bad. And, death is one of those things. I mean, I was raised Hindu, and, Hinduism, we look at death very differently because there's reincarnation, right? And there's the show also talks about reincarnation, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah.
the idea of reincarnation, and it takes this physical body out of the equation. Essentially, it's just, we are not this body. We are not who we think we are here. We are this higher thing, and it goes talks about the soul, or like, whatever you want to call it, whether it's energy, whether it's your personality, whether it's your soul, your mind, whatever you want to call it. But it survives beyond this body. Think about it as like changing clothes, right? The clothes get dirty, they get old. You need to get rid of the clothes. Same way this body gets old, gets dirty, gets whatever, you get rid of it, right? It's become tattered, and you need to shed it to move to something ideally better. But that kind of consciousness survives the physical body. And when you think of it that way, again, it doesn't make death any easier necessarily in the moment to deal with. But you mentioned with masters not having any reaction, they'll still have that reaction. But they can recover from it much quicker than anyone else can. And sometimes they get to the point where they can recover from it without even anyone ever noticing they had that reaction. But they always have it, at least a little bit, right? It's always there. They just bounce back that much quicker from it because they know something higher than what we know, right? And so it's just a matter of being okay with those kind of things. When we grieve for people who pass, and this is not where I thought this conversation was going to go, but I'm cool with it. When we grieve for people who pass, we're not grieving for them, right? We're grieving for ourselves. We're really in reality, we're right now, when we grieve for someone, we're saying, you know what? I'm sorry for myself that I lost this person, right? It's not that we're grieving for them. If they're in pain, they're not in pain anymore, right? If they were amazing, then they moved on to a better, even more amazing existence necessarily, right? It's not like, but they didn't have to deal with the same bullshit that we have to do anymore. And we miss them because we are used to having them there for us. We're not used to being without them. So we grieve for ourselves, not for them.
Right.
Absolutely.
And like, speaking of that eternal spiritual nature, it was just not something that I felt like I was really like taught about. I wasn't really told, like, don't worry if your body dies, the essence of you still lives on and still exists. And it wasn't until I did that dive into death that I found that. And then if you take sort of that eternal spiritual nature and then you look at Western medicine, and as a nurse at the time, I looked at Western medicine and I said, wow, there is this huge opportunity for growth for Western medicine. If we start to acknowledge the eternal spiritual nature of human beings, of the greater purpose of what is going on, we can create, not just a healing system full of pills and surgeries and hospitals and that sort of thing. We can create an environment, we can create lifestyles, we can create societies where the promotion of health and wellness and life is the focus, and not the sickness and the pills and the death. And because really, if you acknowledge your eternal spiritual nature and you look at that, you look at the other things that go along with that, the mind and the energy field, you start to realize that is the origin of everything. And so, another thing I found when I was on my, cancer curing journey or whatever, was that science didn't often take the time, and whether this is funding, I'm not saying this is anyone in specifically, but, pharmaceutical companies fund most of the studies that happen for, any kind of healing mechanism, as far as like evidence-based studies, those really well done studies. What I found was, like, they weren't looking at the anomalies. My friend who healed herself of stage 4 breast cancer, nobody asked her what she did. And so I was like, wow, this is a great opportunity as a nurse. Nurses don't prescribe medicine. We're there at the patient side. We're there, giving the medicines, assessing, and we're with them the most. And taking that experience with my patients and then also combining it with the idea of wow, there's this opportunity for growth in Western medicine. That's kind of how I looked at it. I'm just excited to expand. How can we continue to expand? Because it just was hard. It's hard for me to watch others suffer. It was always hard for me to see that. And it's just amazing, if you have an eternal spiritual nature, then you can decrease your suffering. And what more do you want out of life, than to not suffer, to be at peace, go through your days with, with excitement, waking up because you want to, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's really, really powerful to take that time and really look at the nature of spirituality and where we come from. I mean, a lot of things, honestly, a lot of the advances in science in the last literally 100 years were discovered thousands of years ago, right? And they're just now discovering these things. I mean, even the things thousands of years ago, we talked about, that there are writings of 9 planets thousands of years ago, before they had telescopes, right? Before they had the facilities to see into space. They were talking about 9 celestial bodies. But then maybe they didn't call them planets, but they call them 9 celestial bodies, right? And what's out there? I mean, maybe Pluto is not a planet. Fine, whatever. That doesn't matter. But they talked about these different things, right? These different concepts. They talked about different healing herbs that they now are using, to find these different things, right? They talked about, they had a lot of different methodologies that are now being explored. I mean, the ancient Egyptians did amazing things with medicine. They also did creepy things with medicine, but they did some really amazing advances when it comes to medicine and to medical practices, and they're now exploring a lot of those things, and it's really fascinating to look at these kind of things. And I realize we could talk about this for hours, but we are at 31 minutes now. But I do want to give you a chance to share your contact information. I know it's at the bottom before, but for folks who want to reach out to you, what are some signs people may want to reach out to you just either to talk or to find out more about how you can help them? What do you tell folks when they ask you those kind of questions?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that you can reach me. I have an email address. It's Brittany@surfingwavesoflight.com. I also have a website, www.surfingwavesoflight.com. And on there, you can see the different things that I offer, the coaching, the energy healing, those types of things. As well, I have a blog, and I'm still in the process of building it up a bit more, but a lot of the things we talked about today, I'm featuring things about the topics of death, different studies in quantum physics, energy healing. So for the skeptics out there, which I'm glad people are skeptical, because it is important to be skeptical in certain ways. You want to take all that information you're looking at and run it through your guidance system and see what resonates with you. So I appreciate that. Also, I have an Instagram, Surfing Waves of Light. So everything's pretty much Surfing Waves of Light. And you can just find me in that arena.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's awesome. And thanks so much for coming on the show. I keep calling this a show. I don't know if I'll call it a show. I don't know. Whatever. Coming on the live stream, whatever. Thanks for joining me today and talking with me. I think this has been it's been fun for me. Hopefully it's been fun for the people watching and for the folks who are going to watch later. But if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to Brittany, reach out to me, comment below if you like the video. Please hit the like button, hit subscribe, get notified of future videos. I'm happy to do this more often and talk about these kind of things. I love spirituality. It's one of those things where we don't talk about enough. Honestly, I think we get caught up in the tangible world, and in Hinduism, we talk about encumbrances and this being an all illusion and being encumbered by the physical world. And I think that we are at an extreme of that world right now. Ronnie Chang is one of my favorite comedians, has become one of my favorite comedians in the last year or so. And he talks about it in his Netflix special. If you haven't checked it out, watch it. It's hilarious. He talked about Amazon Prime and like the fact that we are so, in America, I think it's the whole world, but America is an extreme version of that, or has become that, where we're so expectant, like we're so entitled, right? Where it's like, we don't want Prime in 2 days shipping. We don't want Prime in 2 hours. We want Prime right now, like now, like 2 hours is too long. We need Prime now. And it's hilarious. You got to watch it. It's actually really fun. He does a better job than I do, obviously. But, but yeah, Brittany, thank you so much. I appreciate it. For those of you guys watching, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Hannah, thank you. You are awesome. She's our director / my executive assistant. So she's been fantastic at this. We'll do more of these. If you guys want to see more, please let me know. Let me know what topics you want me to cover and who you want me to connect with. Thanks again, Des. Thanks again, Brittany.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a great rest of your day.